In this time of sitting here, our intention is to let go of the past and future. There is nothing to figure out right now. The past is irretrievably gone, never to exist again. And the future doesn't exist. Why waste time there? Why not be here now? In our practice of intimacy with life, the beginning of each breath is important. So is the rising to fullness and the arrival at fullness and the changing direction and the decline. Or if we are using sound as our primary object, becoming increasingly intimate with each emergence. There are spaces between the sounds. Inhabiting a consciousness that is fresh, new, with each sound. Observing the mysterious miracle, really, that happens when the mind wanders off. Perhaps it wanders off into some story, some problem you're having, or something you're trying to solve, or just rehashing a conversation. Observe the waking up that happens when mindfulness appears. The thoughts, like dreams sometimes, seem so real. And then they're gone in an instant. We are resting back in the moment, trusting the earth will support us, trusting life will support us, experimenting with not leading with the mind. Let us lead with presence. Here-ness, nowness, this now of the earth, this now of the rain. And this, of course, isn't restricted to when we're sitting in meditation. It's quite simple to drive consciously, to bathe consciously. It's simply to know what we're doing. It's not a distraction from the activity. sometimes the impulse arises to take notes or write things down to remember. And for the most part, I encourage not to do that. There's nothing to remember here. If it will relieve you to jot something down, then to do that episodically. But don't make a habit of it. Let your meditation time be at rest. The same thing with the chat on the Zoom. During the meditation, if you can, just let everything go. There's nothing to achieve. Resting in the body. Resting at the sense doors. And we practice alone and together. Let us honor our togetherness. Let's remember the others here, the apparently others. What kind thought or blessing might you extend? To the person or persons before you? Wish them well. May you be mindful in your many activities that will come today. May you sleep well if you're approaching bedtime. Remember to stop a few times during the day for 2 or 3 breaths and recognize that there's nowhere to go. It's always just right here, and the world appears within you. And please now take a moment to feel your way into the body and notice how it's feeling, what its sensations are, and see if it might like to stretch. And then mindfully, even without opening your eyes, be in the body. Ooh. Let yourself reclaim a little more room to live in for the day. And then mindfully allow your eyes to open. And you'll be seeing. Seeing and knowing it. That's a trip, isn't it? Seeing and knowing it. Many decades ago, I helped my early teacher, a guy named Sujata, create a lecture tour and retreat in Europe. I'd lived in Europe for several years, and I set up talks in 10 different cities. And quite a wild time. It was a 1-month retreat. And one of the women who came on that retreat, her name was Ineke van Eden. At some point during the retreat, she started wobbling when she was doing walking meditation. And she became more and more and more unstable, and then she started sort of whimpering. And I took her to another room where we were doing interviews, and she lay on the floor and started crying harder and harder and harder. And then she started saying in Dutch, "Die glazen, die glazen." And her sobbing just got, just wild, out of control, in a certain way wonderful. And then as it unfolded, she had remembered that when she was a little girl during the war, she had to run in broken glass in bare feet. And she had completely repressed the memory. And it was a huge turnaround in her life. She was an artist. She had art in the National Gallery, and it was all black and white, dark art. And she took me to the museum when the retreat was over and I visited her in Amsterdam. She took me to the museum and said, "You taught me how to see myself. I'm going to teach you how to see art." And she took me into the museum, and she put me in front of a Rembrandt painting. I remember it very well. Oh, excuse me, I forgot a piece. She took me in blindfolded. In front of a Rembrandt, she took off the blindfold and said, stand here and see. Do nothing else. I'll be back in 30 minutes. And so I got to spend 30 minutes with that painting. And then she came back and put the blindfold back on and took me in front of a Vermeer painting. These are originals, the beautiful detail. In front of a Vermeer painting and said, "I'll be back in half an hour." And then when she returned, she blindfolded me again and took me outside and said, "That's as much art as you should ever see in a day." And I remember the depth of those paintings really, really impressed themselves upon me. And it was a present moment practice in seeing. And one other detail to this story, I visited her a couple of years later again, and she was doing art that was like, what's her name, O'Keeffe, these giant red and white and blue, incredibly colorful things, releasing that anguish on that retreat, changed her life. Totally changed her life and her perception of reality. So what we're up to here is something of really great importance. It's useful for stress management, it's true. It's very helpful for getting along better with our friends and family because we can communicate more consciously. And it is about profound transformation of the way we are in the world. And it happens all by itself if we make the time. If we will take the time to be inward. So I had another thing in mind, but I'm not going to do that today. I have one announcement which I'd like to make, which is that on June the 6th, oh my mind, how silly. I have this phobic thing now. It's like, oh no, I'm going to forget the name. Hang on, I'm just going to be quiet here for a moment and be embarrassed. Oh, it's getting further and further away. Well, how silly. Interesting. I'm embarrassed. On the 6th, if you want, come at 9 o'clock, and there'll be registration for this on the website. And the website will be back up soon. I discovered this morning it was down, as did some of you. It's funny. I looked at it last week and I checked, and it seemed as though it was all fine and the bills were paid. But somehow or another, it slipped through. So,
Robert, you're going to be on with Rebecca, right?
No.
No.
It's
Oh, it's a Saturday.
a Saturday. She's the founder of Living Earth here in Portland.
Oh, Betsy.
Betsy, thank you. Oh, God, how stupid. How stupid. Isn't that harsh, right? Critical, self-critical. Betsy Toll and I.
70-year-olds does it take to remember Betsy?
Well, we had another marvelous conversation yesterday. And Betsy's been a devotee of Ram Dass, and she's really been deeply into her spiritual practice for decades. And so we're going to meet here on Zoom from 9 to 1 p.m., 9 till after lunch, and do a conversation and some meditation. And it's around the issues of love and vulnerability, and how we can use this time when we're more cloistered than we usually are to open up more and more into our precious humanness. And I'm certain it will be a wonderful morning. So you'll hear more about that, but that's the first announcement. Betsy Toll. She's also a great friend of Joanna Macy. The last time Joanna came here 2 years ago, it was at the invitation of Betsy. So, that all said, I'd like to hear what's happening in your hearts. What is your experience of this day, these days?
Good morning, Robert, Peter, and good morning, Sangha.
Hello, Peter.
I had two things I wanted to share. I'm one of those mediocre meditators, which is an improvement because I used to be a lousy one. Now I'm mediocre. So I need all the help I can get. So I wanted to share this. This is a candle that actually has a wick that sounds like a soothing crackle. So it's one of those other objects, and it also has a fragrance and a light. So it's almost like three objects in one for meditation, which I found helpful for me. Very innovative idea, a crackling wick. Very cool idea. The other thing I wanted to share, not for discussion necessarily, just get people to reflect on this. Now, I've been attending this and been very grateful to you, Robert, and the Sangha for putting this on. And you had mentioned, I think last week, that you were considering continuing this, possibly, after we return to whatever we return to. So I was just going to send you an email, but I thought I would put it out for the Sangha, an idea just to consider, to request people to either be in the Stewart Circle, participate in this daily meditation practice, donate $10 a week, and of course nobody's turned away if they can't afford it. In a previous lifetime, I was a psychotherapist, and even at the clinics where we had sliding scale, people would contribute $1 because it was a sign of their commitment to the process. So not for any necessary discussion, or to stimulate a debate, I just wanted to put that out there. For people.
Great. Thank you.
Robert, thank you for reading from the Hua Jin, the second Lao Tzu book over the last week or so. It's inspired me to focus on that tonight at my won't be Rumi's guest house. It'll be Lao Tzu's guest house at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome to join me. Listen to some poetry that has been part of my life for years. It's wonderful stuff.
And I imagine the website will be up soon this morning, and that people will be able to find the link to that on the website tonight.
I wonder if I think Connections is still up, so I'll send the link out on Connections.
Okay, good idea.
Robert?
Tim, hello.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, does Jim's thing tonight use the same Zoom phone number, address, whatever you call it,
As this?
you're using today?
No.
This is it'll be a new link. It's the same software, but it's a new link. Yes.
Right, a different address or a new link or something like that. So it's a 9-digit number.
Yes.
Could you tell it to us so that...
Are you on Connections, Tim?
No,
No.
I don't know what that is.
It's the listserv for PIMC. No. Okay. Well, let's let Jim research it if he wants right now, and then he can
I'll
tell
put
you.
I'll put it on the chat line.
Okay.
Another proposal of a question to bring up is, what's emerging through this period that you hadn't known before? How is this enriching your self-knowledge? How's it challenging you?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Robert. I could just say that the challenges for me, and the awareness that my experience here on this earth has shaped me, including habits that I formed that I now am much more aware of, and aware of the power of those habits. And it really takes a huge amount of conscious awareness. And it's just each moment when something comes up, then I am aware that that choice is right in front of me. There it is. I can either run with that habit energy, or I can let it go. Anyway, that's it.
That's the crux, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you for that comment, because I experienced that very thing yesterday in a real clear way during Robert's presentation. Came a point where I started getting really tired of sitting, and then I started getting bored, and it was amazing the power of how powerfully I felt moved to leave and to go do something else, and yet what I decided to do was to choose to sit with that. But I'll tell you, it was no small task.
You know, thanks, Russ. That shows up on Sundays, particularly at PIMC, that it's not uncommon for someone, or ones sometimes, to get up and leave in the middle of a Dharma talk. And no one would leave a Dharma talk in Asia. I mean, it would just not be done. And on a few occasions, I've actually commented that if you're here for the beginning of the Dharma talk, please stay till the end. Of course, if your beeper goes off, or you're called to the ER or something, of course then go. But if you're just bored, why not be bored and experience that? And I got to the place, I have come to the place where I can say that, because I don't take it personally anymore at all. But I am concerned for the person who believes it's of such importance to not ever tolerate boredom or some idea that they don't like, that they have to flee. And it's one of the incredible strengths of retreat, that when you're on retreat, you're kind of stuck. And there sometimes will come an afternoon or a day or more than a day when you can't stand yourself, you can't stand the group. Obviously, the teacher is a charlatan, and really heavy stuff can come up. And yet, if we stay with it, then we get to realize that this is the reactivity of this mind. This is the demand for pleasure right now. This is the demand to never tolerate boredom. I mean, these things, I think our kids are in deep, catastrophic addiction with these things. And what's ever going to happen to them? I mean, some of them, through this COVID time, it's been really interesting watching my teenagers here and how much time they're spending on their phones, because they cannot tolerate not being in communication with their friends constantly. And I remember for me, the first retreat I did in India, it was such a withdrawal. Of course, I was also withdrawing from marijuana, which made it more challenging. My girlfriend had told me she wasn't going to marry me and live happily ever after, so what else would you do other than stay stoned for several months? So it was the thing to do in 1971 in India. But to sit and not do anything, it's like it's un-American. Or it's not just America. My daughter traveled for 6 or 7 months in India 2 years ago, and she said that the young people there are even more on their phones than the young people here, if that's possible. So that's my little rant about phones. It hasn't happened. They now drive themselves, but I had a little sign in the window of my car, and when my stepkids got in and their friends, I said, please turn off your phone. And it wasn't adequate to turn it down, because then there's always a buzz, and then I have to check my text. And so I would wait there till they turned off their phones, and they did not like it. But I would also say, I am not a chauffeur. I'm a person, and I'd like to have some conversation if I'm going to be driving you somewhere. It was kind of fun. It did not hold any water at home. And also, can you believe this? In the schools, the Beaverton schools, the kids have their phones in the classroom. And they use them. They text during class, and they're They're on them. Our friends and co-teachers, Paige and Adrian in Vancouver, teach at a small private school, and they have a nest in each room. When you enter the room, there's a nest, and they make them pretty. There's a nest for your phone, so the phone is with you in the room, but it's not in your hand. But our school system is afraid to do that. Some teachers will do it, but most don't. Also, to my rant on this, Adrian is he's in the 9th grade, I guess, and they're having classes at home. None of the kids have their cameras on. The teachers are teaching to a blank screen. That's ridiculous, he said, with his gray hair and agedness. I'm done with my rant. I certainly wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that here. If there were nobody on screen, I wouldn't do it. Because then it's like talking to the camera, and it's really difficult for me. So, anybody else?
Good morning, Robert. It's Randy.
Randy, hello again.
Hey, I had a revelation. Jumping on your rant, but from a different perspective. It's not just the kids, by the way. I'm comfortable in silence, so my addiction to the phone is social media specific, and my insight was, whenever a difficult thought comes to mind, I want to distract myself mindlessly, and I've been starting to awaken to the fact that I'm mindlessly reaching for my phone whenever I'm in the midst of a difficult thought, instead of being present with it and letting it go. And that was a big revelation to me within the past month, that I'm mindlessly reaching for it. And that's been very, very helpful to gain that insight.
Great noticing. And then I presume you're experimenting by not reaching sometimes, and then you get deeper into it.
But I've noticed also there's a difference between me having the phone on silent and me turning it completely off, and it can be in the same pocket still.
I see.
There's something to that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Robert.
But I want to. Go ahead.
I'm a teacher, and I want to chime in about students having their cameras off. It is sometimes, I really wish I could see my students' faces, but I also have to remind myself that I don't know what's going on at home for these students, and for some of them, I teach middle schoolers, it could be an embarrassment factor that they don't want to show. But what I find is worse is at my staff meeting, when my fellow teachers don't have their cameras on, because I feel like in that instance,
Good grief.
turn your camera, what are you doing? This is a staff meeting, we're all here together. What are you doing that you don't want us to see for an hour? I don't know. And so
Yeah.
I wish I could see my students, and I feel that, but I also remind myself that they're young, and there's the embarrassment factor there. But adults, I don't understand adults not having their cameras on. Also, I had one other thought. When I was growing up, I got my first cell phone when I was 14. And there was a big thing, no cell phones at the dinner table. And I always was trying to hide it, I had my cell phone. Now, if I sit down to dinner with my parents and grandparents, guess who's on their phones? My parents and grandma are on. They can't put their phones away. So I just, tables have turned a bit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Oh, one thing I got from my stepson, I said, why don't you turn yours on? He said, stepdad, Robert, I live in a community of other young people, and they'd tear me to shreds. Right? It's socially not acceptable, and you would be scorned for doing it. Russell, again, hello.
Hey, Robert. Well, right. You just said it. I don't think what you said was a rant. You clearly have strong feelings, as do I, and what's being lost. But the reality is, especially for people who have had these phones since maybe they were 5 years old or younger, their physiology, their neurology is different than ours. I don't think we've tracked yet how. And the phone has got, every time they go on, there is not only avoiding social condemnation, because that is the milieu and the norm for them, but there's also that little squirt of dopamine. And it's totally unconscious, but it's addiction right down the line. And that's where it's going. I don't know. That's the, I think I would safely say disliking would be my response.
Yeah.
It is what is. It truly is a new world. So I just wanted to comment on that. And I don't know about not turning cameras on at a staff meeting. That seems very strange.
Thank you, Russell.
Robert, this is Bee.
Hello, B.
Hi. There's a phrase that's been coming to me all day as we've been here from the beginning when we were meditating, and it's a phrase from John Keats about irritable reaching. And he talks about how difficult it is for us to dwell in uncertainty, that it's hard for us to withhold judgment and to not want to know something and to not want to jump to whatever the conclusion is. And because of that, we have a tendency for this sort of irritable reaching for certainty, even premature certainty.
Huh.
And it just keeps coming to me, and I thought it was interesting that the phrase of reaching for our phone is coming up, and it makes me think about that desire that we have constantly for a sense of certainty, especially now when we're in such an uncertain time. So I just keep thinking about that beautiful reaching.
Thank you. Juka.
Robert, it's Dave.
Robert?
Hi, Dave.
Bee's comment especially. You asked what in this time is challenging me, and very much a work in process. Is impermanence. This whole thing's given me a chance to really examine impermanence, the things we, speak for myself, the things I take for granted that will happen. How we used to go out the door, hop in the car, go to the grocery store, people there, not thinking about it, but it's just the way it is, and they become concrete touchstones, and how they're not concrete at all. I go to the grocery store, and there's no toilet paper, the shelves are empty, which is an amazing thing to see, and it's, I realize we expect to see things in the grocery store, we expect them to be well stocked, and I've been just examining that throughout everyday existence, those things in society that feel like concrete, but we wake up and they're things that you hang on to, the certainties, and seeing in myself the need to control things so I can have something to hang on to for certainty. I now, when I go to bed, I realize I'm going to bed with the expectation that I will wake up in the morning. So smooth. But it's made me really appreciate falling asleep. And what an amazing thing that is, that consciousness, poof. And I expect it. I get into bed and I don't even think about I will fall asleep. I just hit the pillow and there it goes. And I've started just examining that. I recently had knee surgery and getting anesthesia. I'm lying in the operating. There's the operating room. There's the doctor. We're joking. They've got the IV in. They say, "Okay, you're going to feel a tingle over here." And I'm thinking, "Yeah, well, all right, here I am. I'm awake. Hello, Dave. Dave, you can wake up now."
Yeah.
Wow. And how there really is nothing that we can depend on, even consciousness, even awareness, and watching the fear and the stirs up in my body, what is homesickness? I've abandoned that stuff from way long ago, and this, I need home, and just watching that. And how does one survive in a world where, I don't know, there's no, there's these faces on the screen. So as I say, very much working 5, but it's really giving me, shoving my face into impermanence and my reaction to it, watching my reaction and trying to find a place for it. So that's my rich life at the moment.
Thank you very much, Dave. I heard a woman's voice at the same time as David spoke. Oh, there you are, Tima. Hi.
Hi, it's Tima. And I just wanted to comment again on the topic of being on screen and being seen in the video world. I really have a lot of compassion for how hard that is. Part of my practice and coming to the Zoom is to kind of make a little peace with that being seen. It's really, really hard. I think the first week or two that I was on the Zoom, I could only see myself in the little box, right? And the self-criticism. And, all of those feelings. And it's very interesting how I just keep coming. And now I don't see myself as much, right? Like that's receding, and I'm able to open to other people and to really be out of my own self-consciousness in that way. So I have a lot of empathy for the kids that are 14 or 13, that are almost 50. And I can barely bring myself to be seen.
Wow, and here you are speaking. Now you're speaking up and being seen doubly and triply. Thank you so much.
It's so hard, and I just, people should keep that in mind, that everybody is not so comfortable.
I will be more mindful of that in myself. I'm such an extrovert that it's normal. But yes, of course that's true. Thank you very much. Oh, you're muted. I couldn't hear you, that last comment. I want to.
I was going to say, I'm often perceived as being an extrovert. So there's this sense that, of course, I would want to be seen. And it's really so funny how people see us and what's really inside.
Right. Thank you.
This is Christy, and I have a comment about Tima's comment. The video part for me has been really distracting because I'm always looking at myself. Oh, is my chin up? Oh, I look funny. My nose is red. So my ego is really, really involved. But in our little Zoom squares, I have a 3 little dot area, and you can select to unview yourself.
Oh.
And so that's been quite helpful for me to more get out of peeking at myself. I hate it, but that's what I do, so that's what I learned. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, it's 10 after 8. Anybody sitting with something? This is just starting to warm up here. Anybody want to say something?
Robert, I have a question, and this may be for a longer discussion at another time.
Hello, Natasha.
This has been sitting with me for a little while, and I've been trying to figure out how to skillfully ask it. I'm noticing a lot of judgment towards myself about this too. When we are striving to live in this practice of mindfulness and non-judgment and letting go of attachment, and this is something that I find happening to myself a lot. The others close to us or around us, but especially those close to us in our personal lives are not practicing that, I find myself experiencing a lot of judgment and a lot of frustration and a lot of resentment and dukkha and dislike, all of it. And what do we do with that? How do we balance that desire to practice the compassion and non-judgment, but then also the desire to have those around us living mindfully as well?
Yeah, that's really a big one. If a person commits themselves to Dharma practice and goes more and more deeply into it, it's very much the same as if one member of a couple, for instance, goes into therapy. It destabilizes the relationship because some of the old ways that one could tolerate or demand no longer work. And so mercy, compassion, tolerance, patience, all of those things are very important. And learning to live with disappointment. But it is destabilizing. And friends of mine now, they're about 10 years older than me, they were part of the founding of the transpersonal psychology doctoral program in Palo Alto. And it was a very intensive experiential program. And after 3 or 5 years, they changed it radically because they were precipitating 75 or 80% of their people were getting divorced.
Yeah.
And so they made the application process for persons who were in relationships. Both people had to apply. Wow. And the partner who wasn't going to be in the intensive program still had to agree to do retreats, and there was something, it was like a drug and alcohol treatment, you know, when you bring in the family, that because it's a systemic issue. So having patience, and also realizing that one of the other things, and one of the reasons for PIMC, is that it's like a person moving into recovery, we have to have friends who are in recovery.
Yeah.
And we are in recovery from the delusions of greed, hatred, and ignorance. And so there really is a change, and our values change. So seeking friendships, but that then can further destabilize the relationship. And so, you know, I often encourage people to get themselves into therapy, or you know, just or learn to accept that very difficult thing that there's certain things we don't get in the relationship we're in, and so on. I think I told just a few weeks ago the story of, I went and did 2 months. I was in graduate school in Toronto, a master's in environmental studies in 1972, and I went off and did 2 months of 16-hour-a-day meditation, Burmese model, and silent for 2 months. And when I went back to school, we had a habit. We'd get together on the weekends, certainly, and we'd drink beer and smoke a little weed, and then talk about the world's environmental problems. And we really got into it, and it was cool in a way. We grew tomatoes and had our own spaghetti sauce. It was a whole way of doing things. But after 2 months of silence and everything that I had suffered and learned from that, I didn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
And where I went to with it was finding fault with them, that they really should be meditating, and then finally, and it was quite an encounter. There was an Australian guy. I remember the place and the moment. He said, "Robert, we're not the problem. You are. You are intolerant of us." And I found myself leaving them and going and listening to music, and then my friendship base changed. But there was quite a bit of loneliness, because I didn't want to sit around and get a little drunk and smoke weed and talk. It just wasn't of interest to me. But it was hard. So I hope that helps.
It does. does help, and I've experienced versions of this before. I'm a therapist. I went to grad school for therapy. I'm in a lot of therapy. I'm sober, so I went through that transition of being in recovery, and so I think it is helpful to this in the context of that as well. And it is, so it's not something unfamiliar in that way, but it's scary, and it is that I think that finding that balance of being willing to be disappointed and having to practice acceptance, but then also facing the scary unknown, what can come with change.
Let me just say one more thing. Do you know who Marion Woodman is or was?
No.
She was one of the elder Jungian analysts in North America. She and Robert Bly were good friends, Robert Bly the poet, and they came and did a thing in Portland not so long ago. At that event, she said something that I had read in one of her books. Addiction to Perfection is one of her great books. She said, most relationships are unconscious. And, however, if one person starts waking up in some way, for relationships that are really alive and connected and growing over time, long-term relationships, most times they've come at least once and maybe twice or maybe more to a place where one of the members of the relationship says something like, you know, I really love you. There's this really good thing and this really good thing and this really good thing and this really wonderful thing and this is, you know, and we've been together all this time. And, sweetheart, there is this one thing that is of such importance that if it doesn't change, I'm leaving you. And I've been there. And because sometimes you get to these bottom line issues that this is not tenable. It's not just a mere preference, it's that there's something really wrong. And I've been on the other side of that too. One time when it was, this isn't a request I'm making, this is a requirement. It's like, holy shit! I guess I have to pay attention. Yeah. And it was a very useful thing.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going through a lot of that right now, and thanks to the folks who are commenting in the chat that they're having similar experiences. It's helpful.
Yeah.
It's people who can.
And I guess I'm on a little tear here. I look back at my life and I've had 7 really significant relationships, living together and so on. And I don't look at them as failures. I had a 17-year marriage and then a 13-year relationship that I left. Finally, it was me that left. And I look at each one of them as very important training in the psychospiritual developmental world. And the ambition, I want to get married young and be together till death do us part. Well, that's a view, and not to be held lightly. But there's another view, which is that we're here in this educational institution, and we learn stuff from each relationship we're in, and we can have an aspiration of having it be long term. But to think that, oh, I'm a failure, I'm a bad person because I didn't stay with that first partner is an interesting cultural view. All right, thank you. Well, dear friends, I need to go. Probably some of you do too. Lovely chatting. Hope this is useful. May we all be mindful and free today. So let's sing our song and then head out into the hinterlands of who knows what's coming. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a lovely day. Hello. Hi. Thank you, dear friends on YouTube. Sorry for that start with no sound.